Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Better Call Saul Season 6, Episode 11. It is called Breaking Bad. So full spoilers for the episode as always. And this episode ended up being kind of basically both of what we said last week, which is both Breaking Bad in the context of Saul is Breaking Bad and the main Gene timeline, but also we see some of his life during Breaking Bad via some sort of flashbacks. So it's a bit of a double meaning there. And obviously, yes, there's some huge guest stars to mention, which we'll get into.
Which obviously isn't really a surprise because they announced them during the break. But sure.
Yeah. I mean, some people try and stay media blackout, especially when it comes to some of this.
If they did manage it, I'm very impressed because it was kind of everywhere.
I mean, I never saw the announcement.
Did you not?
No.
I'm actually very surprised at that because they kind of very publicly were like, yeah, we know it's going to leak, so we're just going to announce it and be like, yes, they were on set. Yeah. It's probably like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before it came back from its break.
Yeah, so the episode starts notably in color because obviously the last episode was all black and white. So it's like, okay, what are we doing? Where are we? What's going on? And Saul's tied up. There's some rocking. He's in a vehicle of some kind. And I think it's the tape over the bullet holes on the door that kind of give it away. Oh, wait a minute. I know what this is. And sure enough, next time, or maybe it's the end of the scene you see like the gravesite. But, it's very easy to remember that scene in Breaking Bad when you see that grave.
Yeah, I mean, it's Saul's introduction.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was a little bit worried after the next scene we get of this where we actually, that's the one scene that has, Jesse and Walter in it. I was a little bit worried just after that scene on its own. I'm like, did we really need that? Like, because I think it's because I kind of felt like we were getting towards the end of the episode, and I'm like, was it just that? That's a bit weird. But when we got the rest of the scenes, the rest of the flashbacks, thematically,
There's only one more after that, isn't there?
No, there's 2 more after that.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, it ends in 1.
Oh yeah, that was the one I was thinking of. I forgot about the one with Mike.
Yeah, it's what we want to make. Yeah. And there's a through line. The whole point is kind of like him starting to go down this deep end because he's met, Heisenberg, and he's impressed with his stuff, and like, oh, you two are like the whole like operation. Like, there's potential in this, and maybe we don't think about this so much in the context of thinking back to Breaking Bad, but just kind of how Saul was kind of like, would Walt have gotten to the heights that he did if Saul didn't sort of nudge him forward and like, because this is the thing. The scene with Mike makes it very clear this is a bad idea. Like, this guy is not to be trusted. He is this quick burnout guy, and if he doesn't get killed by cancer,
he's an amateur.
Yeah, and if he doesn't die from the cancer, it's going to end up leading to trouble. And would you believe the end of Breaking Bad proved Mike right?
Sorry, you're saying Mike knows things?
I think it's so funny in the context of this, though, that like having seen all of Breaking Bad, but more importantly, having seen all of Better Call Saul now up until this episode, and like how much we trust Mike and how much Mike's word's important to Gus and to the others around him, and how he solves so many situations. That to then see this moment that we never saw originally in Breaking Bad, this is something that's been just shot for this, but there was a moment where Mike basically has told Saul, "No, leave this chemistry teacher alone. It's bad news." And the idea that everything that's happened since is because Saul didn't listen to Mike is really funny to me.
Yeah, it is. And like I say, we've been following all this stuff. We've seen how on the money Mike is pretty much every time. The idea that Saul would disregard Mike is just, it is a huge character flaw, right?
Yeah.
Not in a bad writing way, just in that for Saul as a character, it's like, yeah, he should know better.
He should, but he's got too much of that greed. He can smell the money. He can smell the success potential. And the episode ends. I mean, the last shot actually is in the Gene timeline, but it's intercutting with the walking into the school. And I distinctly remember that scene at the end of an episode of Breaking Bad where it's kind of the moment where Walt realizes, oh shit, I'm in the game now. Like, because this guy's found me. He's like, because that's the thing. I remember in that episode, Walt's like a little surprised when he shows up. He's like, oh, he's found me. So that Mike scene also kind of explains how he found him. Because, not that we needed it, but it's like, oh yeah, Mike found him. Of course they did, because Mike knows his shit. He knows how to do this.
Yeah.
So No, like as the episode went on, like I got kind of the thematic point of like having all this here. It's just all this is like the key decision that led to his downfall and led to where he is as Gene.
Yeah, and it's mirroring kind of the same moment. He's basically remaking the same mistake in the present day.
Yeah, and we'll get to all the specifics in a bit, but like the fact that the guy that is the victim at the end has got cancer is not a accidental thing. That is a very on the point comparison to Waller. So, or at least it's meant to remind you of Waller at the very least.
It is. I'm glad you agreed with that. You know, the scene about with Walt and Jesse there, that it was like just kind of there, and it obviously justified itself as it went on. But I think there were a lot of people excited about this episode just because of that scene. And don't get me wrong, it was nice. Obviously, they've got great chemistry. They play off each other. Dialogue's fantastic. But on its own is probably like the weakest scene of the episode in regards to like the larger, Jimmy story.
I don't know if I'd call it the weakest. It's just kind of this thing where if this was all it was going to be, I was going to complain that it was just fan service. But then when we got the rest of the flashbacks, it was like, oh no, there's a thematic point to this. There's a reason why it's important we see what he thought of them the very first time. Because even though, we get the first time he sees them when they're threatening him, and that's like the scene that just happened outside and that was in Breaking Bad. But this idea, this is where he starts to get the like, oh, there's potential here, there's money here. Like him sniffing that for the first time is actually ultimately very important in the context of the whole episode. So
it is,
yeah. It's just this weird thing where I'm like, I was wondering, like, because there was nothing in the scene in itself that stuck out as being that was the point of the scene, and then it sort of came into full view as we got the rest of the scenes. I was like, oh wait, no, this was about him, sniffing the potential in these two.
And you probably felt more because, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a pretty sizable gap in the running time between that scene and then the next time we actually have a flashback. It feels like for a long time that we're not going to have any more flashbacks,
which is probably why I thought it was just that, and I was like, that was a bit of a weird inclusion if it's just that.
Yeah, because it goes a good amount of time, I think, before it goes back again. But then with where it leaves it and what it's doing, I wouldn't be surprised if we cut back to this kind of period over the next couple of episodes still, like to parallel what's going on.
I certainly kind of expect some next episode, but probably not right. Like not that what happened next. I expect it to have jumped in the Breaking Bad timeline again to somewhere else.
Yeah. I don't mean we're going to pick up exactly there. Follow probably a little bit further in Walt's journey, which will again kind of mirror what Saul's doing at in the present.
Yeah. So speaking of the present, we start off with Francine, who is got a job. She's like a landlady or something.
Yeah.
She's bickering with these two idiots. She's looking at the clock. She's got somewhere to be, so she drives off and she's watching for being followed. She's paying attention to that, and eventually makes her way to a public phone that's out at some old station that doesn't even look operational. It looks like it's been abandoned for ages. And the phone rings, and she's all ready to go. Like she's looking like if it's not ringing by like 1 minute past 3, she's out of there. But it rings, and sure enough, this is Saul calling for updates because he can't. Because at one point she says something after one of the questions. She's like, "Don't you have the internet?" And I'm like, "Yeah," but he's worried that if you look something up on the internet, like that's traceable. But the idea is that like this is purely something they cannot trace or realize has happened. But she makes sure she gets paid for giving this information. She's adamant about that.
And it's paid pretty well.
Seemingly, yeah. So, which maybe suggests. So, is that the money he made from the clothes heist, basically? As cut,
or it was an old stash they had there.
It could have been an old stash, but I just thought of it there. But I kind of like the idea that he was doing all that because he wanted to know what was going on. But that was kind of partially the motivation for it. But yeah, basically she's like, yeah, like they've taken everything, all your assets are gone, even the ones you tried to hide, like they're all gone. And he's obviously so excited to talk to someone who knows him and knows who he really is that he's like, he begs for it to stay in the call for a bit longer. Is there anything else? Is there something you're not telling me? And then out of nowhere, just that little nugget that we needed for him to propel forward is, there was one call after everything went down, and it was Kim, and his reaction to that, and it's like, oh, here it is, here's the seed, and yeah, we don't get here because he calls like where she's supposed to work now. It was
somewhere in Florida.
It was in Florida, but what was the? It was definitely not. It was not a. She's not a liar anymore for certain. That's a fact.
Yeah, that was a given. But it was something just trivial, like in Florida. It wasn't something.
Yeah. It was. What was it? A pet shop? It wasn't a pet shop, but it was. It was. I don't know.
It wasn't something like a typical like career, like she's jumped from a lawyer to something else. It was just kind of everyday run of the mill job. Yeah,
and obviously the camera and the sound, like, they obscure what this next part of the conversation is. Now, I don't think he spoke to Kim. I think he's angry because he's not getting through to Kim.
Yeah, I think it's obvious he asked for Kim, and then that's where we don't hear anything else after that until we see he's very angry. I wonder if it was she wouldn't come to the phone, and that's why he was angry.
Yeah, maybe they wouldn't put him through to her, or maybe he got bad news about Kim. I don't know, but what I definitely know is that this wasn't the conversation with Kim, because I don't think the show would waste the first time he speaks to her again after this big time jump on something we don't get to see or hear. No,
I don't either.
So, regardless, something upsets him, and he's still wearing that ring in his pinky. I was noticing that throughout the episode. He's slipping. he's
back. Yeah,
he's doing his Saul thing. And actually, it's funny. Like, this episode we called Breaking Bad. For me, the justification for it wasn't having the flashbacks that are set during Breaking Bad or having the actors there. It was the scene where he goes back to Jeff, and it was really funny seeing as Jeff walks in and he's talking to his mother and she's watching the cat videos. The look in Jeff's face, given the last conversation they had where he's like, you never speak to me again, you see me, you cross the street, all that sort of stuff. And he walks in with this look in his face of just like, what the hell? It's when he takes him back out into the garage and he starts describing this next job and he's asking about the cab times. Do you know what this scene was in comparison to Breaking Bad? I think it's the end of episode 4. I could be wrong in the number, but of season 1 of Breaking Bad, after all the turmoil of the first 3 episodes where they tried to do it and they had to dispose of bodies and everything else, obviously they called it quits, right? What is it? No, this is too dangerous, whatever it is, we can't do it. It's the end of episode 4 or 5, whenever he's made the choice, after an episode of having just his boring life back, he comes to Jesse and the episode ends with him just saying, let's cook, and it cuts to the credits. That's what this scene was. This was him coming back to Jeff after he's told him explicitly, no, we're not doing this anymore. I'm not a part of this anymore. This is him saying, let's cook.
Yeah, this last couple of episodes feels very much like accelerated Heisenberg schedule for Gene specifically. Like, because by the end of the episode where, the other guys wanted to back out, he's like, no, we can't do this, And besides, the door's locked now, so it's all done. We can't go back there. And he's like, no, we're doing it anyway. And he goes and crosses those lines. And it feels like that's like, okay, we're probably like, seasons 2 or 3 in, to Breaking Bad on that journey at this point.
Yeah, maybe even later. I'd have to really think about the timeline of Breaking Bad. But yeah, I love that. I love these parallels, and I love that it makes sense that it's quicker in some ways because he's experienced. He knows what to do. It's not like Walt where he was kind of learning everything for the first time as he was doing it.
I think there's a degree of this is a relapse. This isn't the first time he's been like this.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, I would argue maybe he's going further this time. Like, he seems to be crossing lines that he maybe wouldn't have done before.
Moral lines, certainly, yeah.
Even the way he's, at the end where he physically breaks into the place and is like taking those extra risks himself, whereas usually he kind
of sloppy, yeah.
Yeah, it is sloppy. And so I feel like, he's relapsed because he has been here before, but he has pushed further this time, or at least it feels like he's pushing further.
Yeah, there's a lot of great details along this way, and and as per typical Better Call Saul fashion, we start to see it play out before we know exactly what the con is. Because at first I thought it was like specific, because the first mark, if you want to call him that, he's with this guy in the bar, and the guy keeps like bragging, and Saul's like losing all these bets to him kind of intentionally or letting him win. And you're like, okay, is it specific to him? Because that's what I thought at first, and clearly as the episode goes on, it's no, he's just the first of many. Like, this is just an ongoing thing. But they're basically doing identity fraud. They're doing all this to get them knocked out when they get home, and Jeff's driving them home in the cab and putting some tape in the door to make sure that they can get in
some drugged water, which I was very worried about that last guy, and it might still go down this route, but I don't think it's going to anymore by the end. The last guy taking all the cancer medication. I'm like, oh god, is the drugged water gonna react badly, and there may be an accidental death kind of on his hands here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he finds him dead, like next episode.
It's possible. I think it felt less likely by the end of the episode. I think by the fact that because it was already he was pushing boundaries by him personally being sloppy, going to the house, breaking in, rather than just having the slick entry that they had before.
I guess the reason why I'm speculating that you've said that is because there is a line where he says, "Should you be drinking whilst you're taking all those meds?" And the guy just kind of shrugs it off and screw it. And I'm just wondering if it's like a combination of him drinking when he's not supposed to be on these meds plus whatever they've gave him. Because part of me thought and even hoped that Saul might call it off, and when he's getting in the cab, because the other guy offers, "Do you want this? You sure you don't want it?" I thought Saul was going to sort of take it, which might look like a dick move, like to the other guy, but he's actually sort of stopping the plan and saying, "No, I'll just take this one. Yeah, you've got cancer, you can wait for the next taxi." But of course he doesn't, and then he's like determined to finish the job, and he's mad that the big guy is like, "No, I can't do it. I can't rip off someone with cancer. It's not right." And Saul kind of does this weird double justification for it. He's like, "Oh, he's going to be dead before he probably realizes that it's happened anyway," which is a really dark line. It's a really sinister thing to say.
It is, and maybe that would have been true should it have gone to plan. But the fact that now that he's
the window,
the forced entry with the window, will make him go, okay, so someone broke in, and that's when, okay, well, what was taken? What were they here for? Maybe things will get noticed quicker.
Yeah, we see him with his contraption to take the alcohol out the glass without drinking it, so he stays sober.
Yeah, just pour it into the inside of like a hot water bottle. Essentially,
it's a hot water bottle. He's got taped to his stomach, and he's got like a suction
suction pump. Yeah,
very good, very good.
Yeah, very very low tech. Makes perfect sense. Real clever. I did like him constantly trying to be really sneaky with draining the drinks when they weren't looking, and especially on that last guy where he was really taking his time. He was really looking. He wasn't giving him a lot of opportunity to look away, and as soon as he starts doing it, that's when the timer goes off for him to take his medicine, and he nearly gets caught.
It's one of those little things where I kind of expected, like when he realized that this guy had cancer, I thought he was going to actually down it. But I
did as well, yeah.
Because he thought, I need a little bit of, not courage, but I need to dampen the emotions a little bit with this one. All this stuff was just kind of fun to watch and see how it played differently. Because obviously we get the first main one, and we get a montage of him doing it to a few, and then you get this guy towards the end who's the more empathetic. Because the first guy is like a complete dick, so you don't really feel bad about it because he's showing off, he's really cocky. You're like, bit of karma for you, honestly. But this last guy is he's really nice and pleasant. He's not making fun of him. He's just having a friendly chat. He's dying of cancer. It's...
I like how when it came to the argument at the end, the big guy's like, "Hey, I can't do that. He's got cancer." And so I was like, "Yeah, so people with cancer can be dicks. Believe me, I know."
Yeah, that was a good line. I think the idea that this is all maybe as well, maybe he's part of the motivation is because I do think now, after that angry telephone booth moment, I am speculating that he's specifically raising this money for a purpose. That this is about going to see Kim in Florida.
It's that, or alternatively, he was told that maybe she doesn't want to speak to him, and this is him throwing himself in the deep end. Like we had at the end of the regular timeline of the show, where we cut from Kim's left him to him as Saul, just thrown into the deep end of everything. And I wonder if this is maybe a similar thing where it's like, well, he can't cope with that, so he's kind of thrown himself back into this lifestyle.
If that's the case, then I would speculate that the ending and how we get to him and Kim again is that he gets caught and arrested, and she comes and visits him in prison.
His one phone call will be to Kim.
Oh, his one phone call. Yeah, maybe a phone call. That would be that path, or the path that I first thought was that he's just going to go and see her. Like he's going to intentionally go and seek her out now,
which is still possible, if not likely.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, either one is fine. Like the emotional like one-on-one conversation that's going to happen when we have the Saul who's post Breaking Bad finally talking to Kim again after all this time.
It might be the high point of the show.
It might be. It might be. Honestly, I'm going to spoil the context, but there's a conversation at the end of one of my favorite movies, Paris, Texas, that I could see this having some parallels to in the weight of it, and it's just this, two people in a relationship finally speaking again after all this time. But in this case, it's this weird thing where we got the full story of the relationship, and then this time period in between when she left and now, there's this really unique thing where we saw that too. Like, relatively speaking, we saw the Breaking Bad part of the story, and we saw Saul throughout that part of the timeline. So it's kind of this wonderful thing where there's genuinely 11 seasons of weight going into this conversation that is definitely happening in the final episode. No one's convinced. Like, I'm not suggesting this is going to happen, but it would not shock me if she appears in the last moment of the penultimate episode, and then the last episode is an hour of them sitting at a table talking.
If it is, I know there is a section of people who will complain that that's the last episode of the show.
Oh, I'd love it.
And those people can F off.
I would love it.
Yeah, me too.
An hour. Hell, go all out. No, one shot. No cuts. Just one continuous shot. Like that's.
It's not even. It's not that it's likely that that's going to be the case, but it's not necessarily unlikely that they would do that either.
No, I don't necessarily think they will. I'm not expecting it, but like part of me thinks that there's enough for them to talk about. I think.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not expecting it, but also if they did it, it wouldn't feel like a surprise.
The film nerd in me would be raging hard. That's what I'm going to say.
Oh, just it'd be so good. Like even if it's not, I mean, obviously this show has great direction pretty much the whole time anyway. So even if it wasn't the standard direction we expect on this, just the assuming the writing is up to scratch as it has been on this show, just those two characters in a room for an hour at this stage of their lives would be more than enough to be compelling.
Yeah, I think it's notable we got Mike this episode. I think next episode, whatever the flashbacks are, we'll probably get Gus in one. Just because it kind of feels like, obviously the main part of the show is done, so Mike's story was done. This was like a one last, scene with them. This was one last goodbye.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit after Mike's death.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like a little bit of that, potentially.
Yeah. And obviously, I said Francesca, sorry. Similar name. When just the idea that this last little section can be a greatest hits of the characters that can still show up in like the flashbacks or whatever. Obviously, I'm sure there'll be some allusion to Chuck in the finale because like he was such an important part of the show.
We've had it in the last couple of episodes.
I think
it's essential. Yeah.
Perhaps it'll be if this conversation I'm imagining with Kim is this open, honest conversation about why he is the way he is, then I could definitely see Chuck coming up in that quite extensively.
Yeah,
there's so much potential, and I think I'll say it again. I kind of love that we're getting this little mini four episode season at the end. That it's kind of like we've all been imagining where this black and white stuff has been going all this time, with very little to go on really. So the idea that it's like we have all this extra weight of how he became Saul, but also what Breaking Bad did and what happened in that show to him, that there's just so much extra heft to every little decision he's making and what's influencing that decision. So do you think Jeff's mom's going to be a problem because she was spying on them a little bit?
I think it's possible. I think that might be what leads to maybe his downfall. I think that there'd be something ironic with we saw so much of him practicing elder law and having this thing with the older people, and obviously she's not that old, but old enough to kind of fall into that same category where it would really kind of fit this nice dramatic irony for him to be taken down by essentially the cause would be taken down by the people he started off helping at the start of the show.
Yeah. I mean, I think I even said something it was kind of harking back to that when when you that first scene last episode where he's talking to her, it kind of feels like he's pulling a con on her.
Yeah.
I think even in that moment, I was kind of reminded of he spent a lot of time conning old people in season 3. What did I say?
Season 2 and 3.
Yeah,
I think
2 and 3. Yeah,
that was quite big because you had all the Sandpiper people. Then you had the gang that he kind of ran around with in the mall.
Yes. This is right.
Yeah.
So a lot of things there to chew on. But I mean, as per usual, the direction was, there's a lot of moments just when they're doing the first, part of this plan, the first victim, if you will, and there's just all those shots of, looking at Jeff's eyes in the rearview mirror and in the car. You really get that feeling that you're out at night in a taxi somewhere, and there's just this inherent kind of suspense to it. You're waiting, where's this going? How bad is this going to be? How inventive is it going to be? Kind of thing. There's a lot of mood, and part of that, it's black and white. It does help a little bit. It does give it a kind of a feel that you wouldn't otherwise have.
There's some really nice transitions between the flashbacks as well. There's one where it comes back to Jean, where it focuses on the grave, and then as it fades into black and white, you see Jean, in the grave, and then it cuts. He's in bed with all the prostitutes again. It's in that montage of him, back in that lifestyle. He's dead inside. Yeah. I think it's simple. It's not subtle, but it's really effective.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously he reacted to something on that phone call, but I wonder if they were maybe overshooting it, and it's just the idea that hearing about Kim again almost just re-sparked that same feeling that he had when she first left.
Very possible, yeah.
And that's why he's kind of becoming that dead inside Saul Goodman again. So, I'm excited to see just what they do with this now. It feels so ripe with possibilities, and everything feels so just entrenched in everything that's been building to for the last, again, like I said, 11 seasons at this point.
Yeah. No, I'm very, very excited for the last couple, and I think what I'm excited for most is that conversation with Kim, however that goes down. That is going to be, the linchpin of the ending of this show, I think.
Do you know what's so beautiful about that is that they made his relationship with a character who was new to this show be the heart of it, and be the center of it, and be the thing that was going to be driving what we were hoping for towards the end. Which was essential, obviously Chuck was a big part and he was a new character, Nacho had his moments. But obviously Mike was this other character from Breaking Bad, and you had these other characters who would, dip in and out, small roles, big roles, whatever. But this idea that, all this stuff, we're tying into Breaking Bad's great and all, tying into Walt and Jesse's nice and all, but, at least what we're salivating for is the reunion with Kim. And Kim is completely original and unique to this show. She is something that is entirely this show has been about, as much as it's been about Saul. We have learned so much about Saul because of how she's influenced his life, and we've learned so much about her, the same way, all the way around, so it's, I think, if nothing else, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, if I was to sort of pitch what the shows really are good at and why they're so compelling, is because they're kind of case studies about what drives people to do things that aren't very good, right? And I'm phrasing it that way because it's called Breaking Bad, so just it's the opposite of bad. But because when I think about this show, and I think about so much of what I love about the character of Saul, and the same was true for Walter and for Kim, especially these last couple seasons, is why are they making these bad choices? Why are they doing these things? And it's always compelling, and it's always a sense of tragedy of no, don't do this. You're slipping down the rabbit hole kind of thing. But it's always been about what's driving these people to do that, and I think that's what makes these two shows so compelling. Is that's at its core always there. It's all about what's more, and fundamentally, I think any good character writing is partially that. But I think this has been that's what drives both of these shows so much, is what makes these characters do the next things they're going to do.
Right, which is why the people who didn't like last week's episode, for example, it defies logic to me because I feel like they've been watching a completely different show. Because are they here for just action?
People who thought Heisenberg was cool. Those people, I guess. That was their appeal of Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
he's such a badass.
It's so bizarre, and I wonder how they felt about this episode. They probably loved it just because Laura and Jesse were in the scene. Yeah, but no, strange to me. And it kind of to go back to what you were saying there about this show kind of forging its identity with Kim. I think that was probably essential in what makes this. Obviously, it's connected to Breaking Bad. Obviously, it's this parallel journey in a lot of ways. It's taking these similar themes, exploring them from a different angle. But I think what makes it not feel like it's just some prequel is that its core relationship is with this character who is original to this show. It would have been so easy for them to just be like, it's a Saul and Mike show, and it'll be cool and it'll be badass, like you say, and that would probably have been enough to carry it through ratings. Let's be honest, just on name recognition alone. But the fact that it's not that, and it is about these characters who, one of which is completely original, and Saul, for all intents and purposes, like 80% of his character in this show has been original to this show. It was extrapolated from background information, right?
Yeah.
And kind of making that the crux of the show is kind of what helps it stand on its own, and as deserving as its own show, and being, Better Call Saul, as opposed to just it's more Breaking Bad.
It's Breaking Bad Part 2. Because I do think inherently Breaking Bad is the more action-packed show, because inherently Walt and Jesse got themselves into a lot more situations where there was scary people around, or police coming after them, or something like there was a lot more of that in that show.
This has quote unquote action in the form of the capers and the scams and pulling the heists, so it falls in more with a heist movie as opposed to an action movie, which but that's its own form of action.
Yeah, it doesn't make it better or worse. This is not even the point is simply just that that type of action maybe appeals to certain people more, and that's why
it's more just taste preferences as to if do you like heists or gunfight movies, whatever, TP, that's kind of preference.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I love the episode. I think the way it's paralleling like Saul's decisions in Breaking Bad, and the idea that he can sit and he can blame Walt and Jesse for where he is now all he wants, but he actually encouraged it. He prodded Walt forward, and he ignored Mike's warnings, and that's that so it's kind of his own doings. So he can't even just sort of go, it's that chemistry teacher's fault that everything fell apart and I'm here now. He can't. It's still his fault, and so I wonder if he in some level realizes that in these last couple of episodes, if he takes any kind of like reflection or responsibility for his actions. Not that he can make up for them, not that he can fix anything really now, but just admit who he is effectively.
Yeah, and I think we were maybe hoping that we had the tragic end in the main timeline with what happened with Kim. It had to be tragic to lead to Breaking Bad. But I think we were hoping for maybe a happy ending at the end after all this, and now I'm kind of back on expecting the tragedy.
The happy ending, if they do pull it off now, would feel really good after this, though.
It would, and it's not impossible. It might still happen. But after this episode, last episode and this one specifically, it feels like, no, he's crossing that line to this is the only way out now is a tragedy. And we're not quite there yet, but it's so close to just being that point.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I'm not expecting a happy ending. I'm expecting a very bittersweet ending, but expecting that is what would make the happy ending so surprising and fulfilling if they actually did it. But that's not to say that I'm expecting it. It's just that I'm acknowledging that if they are going to give us some form of happy ending, this is exactly how they want us to feel right now.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
That's the genius of it. But yeah, so there you go. Yeah, it's great. So we'll see what the consequences of his actions are. Next episode, we'll see if damn it, Jerry shows back up. Maybe security guard buddy will be a problem. I don't know.
We've got two left.
Two left. Got 2 episodes left.
Oh man, not enough.
Yeah, the final episode's called Saul Gone, which is a great title.
Damn good.
Saul Gone. Oh,
what's the next one called? Seeing as you're on the page, clearly.
Oh, sure, yeah, I'll go to the next one. The next one is called Waterworks.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Is that a description or a command?
I feel like there may be some Waterworks in the audience.
Yeah.
With that title.
I suspect it may be the case.
I don't know. Joe, how we might see actually. I wasn't thinking about other Breaking Bad characters we could see. We could see Hank.
We could, yeah.
I mean, he's already been on the show. Admittedly, he showed up with his partner way back in like season 4 or whatever it was. But that would surprise me to see him again.
No, it's possible.
Actually, on that, it was so weird to hear the name Skylar again, because it's been so long. It was when Francesca said Skylar White got her deal. I was like, oh my god, like, I haven't heard Skylar's name in such a long time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It did kind of stick out almost.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, he's the only other big one that I could see. I mean, I suppose anyone could pop. I mean, but like the other ones have all been in the show anyway. I suppose so. Like the twins and whoever. Like whoever else could show up probably already has. Anything
in the post Breaking Bad, so they kind of already established kind of in that conversation with Francesca, kind of where they all are. Like Huel's off. Wherever he was.
Yeah, they mentioned a lot of them. Yeah, I don't know. Hank's wife, maybe.
Sure, why not?
Maybe they'll finally address her kleptomania that was dropped.
Was that completely dropped?
I think it was. I think that's like one of the few plot lines in the entire 11 seasons of this universe where they said, yeah, this isn't actually that good. We're just going to...
Oh, well. They've got 2 episodes left to get back on track.
We're going to cut to her. She's in like an AA meeting, but it's for kleptomaniacs instead of alcoholics.
Oh, that'd be so funny.
Oh, the potential. The potential. Or maybe they'll pull a 2.5 Men ending where an anvil will just fall on Saul's head, and then Vince Gilligan's going to turn to the camera and say,
"That's why you don't break bad."
I was going to say, he says, "Saul, good man," and then cut to black. Yeah. For those of you who don't know what I'm referencing, the end of 2.5 Men, it wasn't really Charlie Sheen because by that point he'd already been off the rails and he was gone from the show. But they had someone from behind to look at Charlie Sheen. They dropped a piano on his head, and then the creator of the show appeared on camera and said "winning." It's like one of the most baffling, like, stupid things that has ever existed. But there you go. That's our discussion on this week's Better Call Saul. We got 2 left.
Other bits and pieces.
And other bits and pieces, yes. There was actually, I didn't see it till after I saw the episode. Not that it would have spoiled anything, but they made a poster for this episode. And it was that the flask that he picks up, the big round flask that's in the camper. But it's got a fish in it with water. Because that's what he says when he's holding it. He's like, "Oh, my fish could use this as a vacation home." So there's a really classy poster that just says "Better Call Saul" with this flask with the fish in it.
Oh, that sounds nice.
And I'm like, it's almost the one downside to like everything being like digital now and buying stuff online or just streaming from streaming services is that I do love the idea of like every episode having like a classy poster that you can put on like the sleeves of the box set or something. There's a lost art there.
I mean, unlike some other things, at least this has a physical release and survives.
Is there anything you're salty about that you can't get a hold of right now?
Just referencing the current spate of discussion that's going on surrounding the HBO Max removals and some other creators chiming in.
No, yeah.
No. But I was just chiming in. It was the one that stuck out was the creator of the Dickinson Show on Apple TV. At the end of the show, had to beg for a physical copy because they were like, "No, we don't have any."
Right. Well, I'm going to put a kibosh on this because I've got a funny feeling this is going to come up in the TV news.
I think it
weekend.
might. I just
right. Just a funny feeling. So check out the Almost Cancelled TV News podcast that goes up on Sunday or Saturday if you're a patron. But which leads me nicely to say go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support all the content in the shows. You can also hit the super thanks button below the video, and of course get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates and the like. But that is us. So thank you once again for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?